In 2002, America had not yet recovered from September 11th. The film begins with reports of Islamists and possible terrorist attacks. There are news on all channels of the country. An ordinary morning of FBI officers from the Counterterrorism Department, Ray, Jess, and Claire, is unremarkable and consists of jokes about colleagues, gossip about personal life, and morning coffee, among the lots of reports on the desk. The morning idyll is interrupted by a senior officer informing them that they have a call to a crime scene where a girl's body has been found in a rubbish bin. On the one hand, it is not their jurisdiction, after all. It is a murder. However, on the other hand, the place near where the body was found is a local mosque, which could potentially indicate Islamist activity, and given the information that Islamists are now in possession of chemical weapons, and the surge in sales of chemical defense clothing in the city, such suspicions are very, very logical. Ray and Jess, along with other members of the department, go to the crime scene. Jess's daughter Caroline, an 18-year-old girl getting ready to go off to university, is found murdered. Ray notices a picture from the last FBI picnic and catches sight of a guy looking at Caroline with loving eyes. He interviews everyone who was at that party, but no one knows the guy. Ray gathers information and finds out that the guy is working with the FBI. He turns out to be a freelance. This guy has turned in more than one Islamist group and is preparing to prevent another terrorist attack. The FBI employee who supervised this guy admits that he is untouchable and reminds Ray of the office's main rule. The man that they need is a saint, no matter what he's done or who he's done it to. He's untouchable, and any attempt to put him in jail will just fall apart. Reporting this to his superiors, Ray got a clear answer. Stay out of this case. You have no evidence. You have one photo from the party, but your information will be passed on to the right people. And if it turns out to be interesting, they will do the necessary investigative work. A couple of days later, they found a left suspect who took all the blame. And that's what all the investigative actions promised by the higher authorities came down to. However, Ray figures out the idea of his colleagues. Together with his assistant, he goes secretly to the house where the killer lived. Unfortunately, nothing interesting was found there, except for one strange comic book, which the friends take with them without knowing why. There was nothing in the comic book, but Jess, the mother of the murdered girl, was able to get the information they needed from it. It turns out that the guy suspected of the murder was a baseball fan and loved a bar that was based on the comic book and his favorite baseball team. Jess invites Ray and his old partner to this bar and tells them the meaning of the comic book, saying that the killer will appear here because the excitement will bring him there. Ray asks when the next game of the suspect's favorite baseball team is, hoping the guy will be there. And they're not wrong. In the middle of a huge stadium, Ray and his partner find a guy and the chase begins. This time he is caught, but there is no real evidence of his guilt, except for the sidelong glances in one of the photos towards the victim. But he is a secret agent and has already ratted out many Islamists. The higher authorities insist that they need evidence first, and then the criminal case. After arguing with the superiors, Ray rushes in for questioning, persuading his friend Claire, the deputy district attorney, that he is entitled to a 5-minute talk. However, there are already lawyers at the door. The guy explains why he ran away from them both at the races and at the baseball team's game, because if he was spotted with the cops, they would kill him, suspecting him of working for the police or the feds. He says he doesn't know this girl Caroline and that he has enough adrenaline in his life because he's ratting out Islamists, not committing murder, and also he wants to come out of the shadows and work for the police. Gotta let the guy out. Claire goes into the interrogation room and approaches Ray, but something tensed her up, and she figured the guy out. She had angered him, presses his pain points, and in a fit of anger, the guy gives up. He confessed to raping and taking that girl's life. Nevertheless, the guy is released on a call from his superiors because he's a valuable agent in the fight against terrorism. In the lift, Ray, Claire, and Jess meet a killer who has just been released from interrogation. Ray suggests that Jess just take the guy's life. However, Jess wants him to rot in prison rather than fear being put away for 50 years, and she'll be envy him because he'll be dead and no more torture for him. The higher authorities claims that the guy was pressurized, and his confessions mean nothing. The guy could have just lost his temper and been rude. Realistically and factually, there are only photos and sidelong glances at the victim available. That's all the three friends have. It's been 13 years. Ray left the FBI and went into private practice. For all those 13 years, he had been searching for his colleague's killer, and found him. Every day he went through about 1,000 photos of inmates and the information that came in. And now, after 13 years, Ray has found the killer. He returns to the city where he used to work. His colleague Jess works there and in the same place, and Claire, a woman he genuinely liked, has taken over as district attorney. That's why Ray comes to her 13 years later, asking her to excite the criminal case of the murder of Jess's daughter, Caroline. There is a dilemma: to open a case or not. There's still not enough real evidence, and any lawyer, and given that the case involves the FBI, could smash all the evidence. Plus, Jess's own desire to deal with it humanly in a dark alleyway stops Claire from opening a criminal case. At the same time, everything is aggravated by the fact that there is no exact certainty that this guy is the killer. After all, for the past 13 years, found a lot of suspects whose guilt was not confirmed, and with each such search, Jess in something was dying her soul. This time, they decided to excite the case, but quietly, and turned to old acquaintances of the FBI. After 13 years, when the guy got out of prison, he regularly visits his inspector, that Ray also visited. However, where exactly lives the guy didn't manage to establish, but from the conversation with the inspector, he learns about his hobby, horse racing. Ray and his assistant go to the races. Soon they find the guy, but he runs away from them. Ray asks the stable worker to tell him again when the suspect will come to the stable, because the guy loves horses and spends a lot of time at the races. A few days pass. Claire and Ray go to a cafe to have a glass of whiskey and just talk about life. They love each other, all these 13 years. Ray has never made up his mind, and Claire is tactful and doesn't like to intrude. Soon, a message arrives on Ray's mobile that the guy is back at the races. Ray leaves Claire at the bar and goes after the perpetrator. An employee from the stable reports that the guy just drove off in a red car and points it out. Ray instantly sets off in pursuit. He arrives at some auto repair shop that apparently repaints stolen autos. Ray, having called for help, nevertheless decides not to wait for it, and to catch the criminal himself. However, during the stakeout, he receives a blow to the head and loses consciousness. The suspect and his accomplices beat him up, wanting to find out who he is and what he is doing here. Soon the police arrive and Jess arrives with them. A gruesome shootout ensues, during which one officer is killed. Jess yells at Ray, demanding that he stop. A man has died, a colleague of theirs, and it could have been avoided if not for Ray's unrelenting desire to find the killer. The man silently leaves for Claire's house, where her husband soon arrives. He tells her that Ray has been living with them unseen for 13 years. They can't keep away from each other, wanting to give themselves over to their feelings. And then the phone rings again. It's Jess. Jess invites friends Ray and Claire to her house. This can't wait. Jess invites the friends and says it's time to stop, that Ray nearly killed an innocent man today. He was a common car thief, but he had nothing to do with Caroline's murder. After a pause, Jess confesses that she killed the perpetrator herself, 13 years ago. She tracked him down at a bar, then stalked him in a car park and hit him over the head with a metal rod and threw him in the trunk. Then she drove a couple of miles away and took his life and buried his body in the backyard of her house. Claire stops her, insinuating that Claire is the district attorney, and she can't just forget what she's heard, and the punishment for those words is inevitable. Jess says she'll take whatever judgment she can get. Claire, nonetheless, turns a blind eye. Ray is shocked because he has been looking for the perpetrator for 13 years, processing 1,000 photos a day of potential suspects, and all in vain. He leaves town. On the way, his mind keeps going back to Claire, the woman he loves. Jess is his mate, shards of phrases thrown around, and most importantly, One of them said by Jess, "I want him to rot in prison for the rest of his life." The man is alarmed by this and thinks about it for a long time. Soon, Ray decides to visit Jess. The woman has by then moved to the countryside to a quiet place. Ray arrives and stealthily passes to her house, quietly entering the yard. Here, he personally sees that she fulfilled her dream. She didn't kill the guy, but made a personal prison for him in the annex of her barn. She made a home for him where the killer has been living, if we can call it living, for 13 years now. It can be called life only conditionally, because he is given food on a tray in his cage like an animal. And Jess hasn't spoken a word to him in 13 years. The killer, all overgrown and in rags, begs Ray to convince Jess at least start talking to him. Ray is shocked by what he sees and can't come to his senses for a long time. Jess in turn is shocked to see Ray and is confused. There is literally no face on her. Ray silently puts the gun on the table, insinuating that she should shoot the guy. The man himself picks up a shovel and goes into the yard to dig a pit for the killer. After a while, a gunshot rings out. Jess looks at the friend who devoted 13 years of his life to her. Ray digs the pit relentlessly, satisfied that he saved his friend Jess. After all, this was not only a prison for her daughter's killer, but also for herself. After all, she had to see her daughter's killer in a cage every day and give him food like an animal. This is the end of the film. Thank you all for watching this video to the end. Give this video a like. Write in the comments what you think about this film, and see you in new videos.